My family was not musical. My parents were a generation older than kids my age.
Don McLean wrote the most beloved song in American history. American Pie made him a legend and earned him millions. For decades, fans saw him as the gentle folk singer who captured their hearts. But behind closed doors, his family lived in terror. His wife locked herself in the bathroom. His daughter developed anxiety just hearing his name. In 2016, a 911 call at 2 a.m. changed everything. The man who sang about the day music died was about to face his own reckoning. Don McLean was born on October 2, 1945, in New Rochelle, New York. His father worked as a traveling salesman, and his mother stayed home. Her family had come from a poor part of Italy called Abruzzo, while his father's side had deep Scottish roots. Don was named after his father and grandfather, which made things confusing at home since all three were named Donald McLean. By the time he was 5, he had already fallen in love with music. He spent hours listening to the radio and playing his father's old Bing Crosby records. They lived in a small suburban home, and Don helped by delivering newspapers. That small job would later inspire one of the most famous lines in rock history. Don's childhood was not easy. He had a serious case of bronchial asthma that nearly killed him more than once. He would often lie in bed for weeks, unable to breathe properly, missing school and falling behind. During those long, scary days, he'd call out for his mother, who was the only one who could calm him. Because of the illness, he had no close friends and spent most of his time at home learning to play guitar. Don later said that if he hadn't been so sick, he probably would have ended up working at a bank and drinking himself to death. He believed his asthma actually saved his life by pushing him toward music. Then came the moment that changed everything. In 1961, when Don was just 15, his father died from a sudden heart attack. Just a few months before that, they had taken their only vacation together to Washington, D.C., a memory Don would never forget. He was alone at home when his father collapsed, and the shock stayed with him forever. He later said that while it broke him, it also freed him. His father had never supported his dream of becoming a musician. He thought show business was beneath them. When he died, Don no longer had to carry that fear of disappointing him. Even before that tragedy, Don had already experienced a deep emotional wound. On February 3, 1959, when he was just 13, he was getting ready to deliver his newspapers when he saw the headline that Buddy Holly, Ritchie Valens, and the Big Bopper had died in a plane crash. He was stunned. He said it hit him like a punch in the chest. That morning, as he delivered the heartbreaking news to every doorstep, he was also dealing with his own sadness. That moment burned into his memory and would become a key part of the song that made him famous. Despite all the hardships, Don's family supported his music. His sister paid for voice lessons even when they could barely afford it. At 16, he bought his first guitar from a local shop called the House of Music. That store later appeared in the lyrics of American Pie as the sacred store. His training helped him build incredible breath control, which he used in songs like Crying. Don was also bold. He looked up famous folk singers in the phone book and cold called them. That's how he met Eric Darling from the Weavers, who later welcomed him into his New York apartment. In 1963, at just 18, Don dropped out of Villanova University after only 4 months. His family was shocked, but he had met Pete Seeger, the famous folk singer, and that changed everything. Don worked with the Seeger family for years, especially during the Hudson River campaigns. In 1969, he joined Pete on a river trip to raise awareness about pollution. That boat trip gave Don his first real exposure, and some of the songs he wrote on that journey made it into his debut album. That album, called Tapestry, was recorded between 1969 and 1970 in Berkeley, California. While he was singing inside, student riots were happening outside. The album was rejected by 72 labels before it finally came out in October 1970. It included now classic songs like "And I Love You So," but it didn't sell well at first. The label that released it, Media Arts, was tiny and struggling. But FM radio stations started playing it, and slowly, Don became an underground star, especially among college students. At the same time, Don was performing at small but iconic folk venues like The Bitter End, Cafe Lena, The Main Point, and the Gaslight Cafe. These places were where the legends played, and Don began to build his reputation there. To make money, he managed Pete Seeger's estate, which gave him a steady income and helped him build strong industry connections. Over 6 years, he performed alongside people like Bob Dylan and sharpened his style of acoustic storytelling. But no matter how far he got, the pain of his past was always close. His asthma and his father's death deeply shaped how he wrote songs. He said many times that losing his father when he was just 15 had torn him apart, but also gave him the freedom to follow music. That raw emotion poured into songs like Magdalene Lane, where his lyrics became a kind of therapy. By 1970, things started turning around. United Artists Records bought Media Arts and signed Don, giving him a much bigger platform. That same year, he had turned down a scholarship to Columbia Business School. It was a gamble, but now it was paying off. United Artists re-released Tapestry in 1971, and it finally charted, hitting number 111 in the US and top 15 in the UK. Most importantly, Don had already written his next song, the one that would change everything. Don had spent 2 full years working on American Pie before he finally recorded it in 1971. It was 8 minutes and 32 seconds long. Producer Ed Freeman thought it would never get played on radio. The cost of the recording was $7,000, which was a lot for folk music. The piano used for the intro was a Steinway grand piano worth more than Don's yearly income. At first, stations refused to play it. But when WMCA in New York gave it a shot, 3,000 people called in within 1 hour demanding to hear it again. The song hit number 1 on January 15, 1972, and stayed there for 4 weeks. It sold 1.2 million copies in the first month, and over 3 million by March. McLean earned $2.3 million in royalties that year alone. Rolling Stone received over 5,000 letters from readers trying to decode the lyrics. Within 6 months, 47 cover versions had already been released, including ones in French, German, and Japanese. His first major concert after the release was at the Hollywood Bowl on March 18, 1972. All 17,500 seats sold out in just 3 hours. Scalpers were charging $50 for tickets that originally cost as little as $350. During the show, the crowd sang so loudly that Don stopped playing and let them finish the verse. It became his signature move. He played 89 shows that year across 47 cities and earned $1.8 million. At Woodstock 72, over 200,000 people showed up just to hear American Pie. The album also included Vincent, a song about painter Vincent van Gogh. Don wrote it in 45 minutes while sitting in a cafe across from the Museum of Modern Art. Radio DJs thought it was too strange to play, but fans kept calling in. It hit number 12 in the US and number 1 in the UK. That year alone, McLean made $4.7 million. His life changed almost overnight. He bought a $180,000 Victorian mansion with 15 rooms and 5 acres of land. It was a big step up from the $75 per month apartment he used to live in. But the money didn't take away the pain. He wrote American Pie while mourning his father's death from cancer. That line about the day the music died wasn't just about Buddy Holly. It was about the day his own childhood ended. In 1973, he donated $50,000 to cancer research. In 2015, the original handwritten lyrics of American Pie were sold for $1.2 million. Despite his success, he battled depression and spent $30,000 on therapy between 1973 and 1975. After the huge success of American Pie in 1971, Don McLean could have just stayed in that moment forever. But in 1972, he released a new song called Dreidel, and it confused a lot of people. It wasn't just a fun tune about a spinning top. The rhythm actually copied how a dreidel spins, fast at first, then slow, then fast again, and finally stopping. It was so clever that many thought Don must be Jewish, but he wasn't. The song still reached number 21 on the Billboard charts. That same album also had a song called If We Try, which later got covered by Olivia Newton-John. It was clear Don wasn't a one-hit wonder, but instead of staying safe, he started taking risks. In 1973, he wrote a song called The Pride Parade. It was angry and raw, calling out the music industry for selling out. He was already tired of fame. During that time, he was performing across Europe and the US. One of those performances in 1971 inspired a song that became a global hit, but not by him. When Lori Lieberman heard Don sing Empty Chairs at the Troubadour in Los Angeles, she wrote down her feelings, which eventually turned into Killing Me Softly. Don later said he was stunned that his quiet performance could lead to such a powerful song. In 1974, he made an album called Homeless Brother and spent nearly $500,000 producing it. It was filled with expensive musicians, fancy string sections, and even had jazz legend Yusef Lateef. But the album flopped. The songs were sweet-sounding, but the theme was about hobos and homelessness. It didn't match. The lead single failed, and though one song he wrote for Fred Astaire became a small hit later, it wasn't enough to save the album. Even having Pete Seeger sing backup couldn't turn it around. This failure almost ended Don's career with major labels. By 1977, things got worse. He joined Arista Records and released Prime Time, but it didn't even make the charts. He had once sung about the day the music died, but now it felt like his own music was disappearing. He even opened shows with American Pie instead of saving it for the end, like he didn't care anymore. Arista had hoped he would bounce back, but this album broke that hope completely. Then something unexpected happened. In April 1980, he recorded a cover of Roy Orbison's Crying. It wasn't a hit in the US at first, but Dutch radio picked it up. Soon it was number 1 in the Netherlands, then the UK, then Australia. When it finally came to America in early 1981, it reached number 5 on the Billboard Hot 100. Roy Orbison himself said Don's version was the best he'd ever heard. That moment changed everything. The album that followed, Chain Lightning, had actually been recorded back in 1978 in Nashville. It had sat on the shelf for 2 years. But now, with the success of Crying, it finally got released in the US on February 14, 1981. It reached number 28 and went gold. It had country songs, classic covers, and original tracks. One of the songs, Since I Don't Have You, reached number 23. The album proved Don could still surprise people and adapt without losing who he was. After that, things slowed again. He took a 5-year break from recording. Then, in 1988, he came back with Love Tracks on Capitol Records. He was trying to enter the country music scene. His song, You Can't Blame the Train, reached number 49 on the country charts, and the follow-up made it to number 65. But critics said the album sounded too slick, too much like Nashville in the 1980s. Still, it showed Don was willing to try new things and didn't care about staying in a box. In the early 1980s, he also started doing soundtracks. In 1982, he recorded the theme for an animated film called The Flight of Dragons. It never got a full soundtrack release, but fans still remember it. Around this time, Don also toured heavily in Europe and Australia. His shows kept selling out, and fans loved both his old and new songs. Even as the music industry changed, Don found ways to stay relevant. By the late 1980s, his career sales had crossed 40 million records worldwide. American Pie alone sold more than 2 million copies in the US. He had gold and platinum albums in several countries. But not everything was smooth. He got into long legal battles with MCA Records over royalties. The lawsuits involved nearly $500,000 in unpaid earnings. Don wasn't the only one fighting back. Many artists were going through similar issues in the 1980s. Even though the lawsuits were stressful, his music still brought in money from radio, TV, and international licensing. In 2003, something eerie happened. On November 22nd, Don got a letter saying he'd been accepted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame. It was exactly 40 years after President John F. Kennedy had been shot, an event that made Don give up college and follow a musical path. That news made him tear up. By then, American Pie had already been voted the 5th greatest song of the 20th century. The timing felt like fate. But not everything was a success. In 1990, he released an album called Headroom, which completely failed. It didn't chart anywhere. Songs like 1967 focused on the past. But in that moment, music was changing fast. Bands like Nirvana and Pearl Jam were taking over. Don's soft, emotional ballads didn't fit anymore. The album's failure was so big that he had to rethink everything. Then, in 2003, he shocked everyone with a children's album. It was called You've Got to Share, and it had 17 songs for kids, including folk standards and new material. He recorded it with his own children, Jackie and Wyatt. Surprisingly, it got nominated for a Grammy. That nomination proved he could still move people, even in totally different genres. In 2021, he got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. It was the 2,700th star, placed right outside the Pie Hole restaurant. That wasn't random. It was done on purpose as a tribute to American Pie. The ceremony happened during the 50th anniversary of that song. Weird Al Yankovic even spoke at the event. The media covered it heavily, and Don's anniversary tour sold out in both the US and Europe. Even after 50 years, his music still pulled crowds. In 2015, his original handwritten lyrics to American Pie were auctioned at Christie's for $1.2 million. It was the third highest price ever paid for an American literary manuscript. The bidding lasted only 4 minutes. Around the same time, he performed at Garth Brooks' Central Park concert in 1997 in front of nearly 1 million people. That moment felt like another rebirth. Don later said it sparked a whole new chapter in his life. But behind all the music and fame, his personal life was often dark. He married Carol Sauvion in 1969. They divorced in 1972, the same year he hit peak fame. Carol later built her own career and stayed silent about the breakup. But rumors swirled about Don's infidelity and controlling behavior. In 1987, he married again, this time to photographer Patricia Schneer. They had 2 kids, but their marriage was troubled from the start. Patricia later said Don's rage and control made her afraid in her own home. She described how he'd ruin her artwork just to upset her. Back in the 1990s, he had moved his family to a 175-acre estate in Camden, Maine. His wife and daughter later described it as a cult-like place where Don controlled everything: what cars they drove, what furniture they could use, even how they decorated. His daughter Jackie later said she lived in constant fear, terrified of losing his love or financial support. His paranoia only got worse after his business partners stole $200,000 from him. He had trusted them for years. The betrayal made him more controlling, more withdrawn. He filed lawsuits to get his money back. During all this, he was still making up to $500,000 a year just from American Pie. But the emotional cost was high. The theft and isolation only deepened the cracks in his family. It was just after 2 in the morning on January 18, 2016, when a 911 call came from Don McLean's house in Camden, Maine. He was 70 years old. His wife, Patricia, had locked herself in the bathroom, terrified. She told the dispatcher he had pinned her down for hours, hit her, screamed at her, and wouldn't let her leave. When police arrived at their Hope Road home, they found bruises on her body. McLean was arrested without a fight and taken to Knox County Jail. He was released soon after on $10,000 unsecured bail. By sunrise, the story had already started to spread, and the man behind American Pie was no longer a beloved icon. He was now a suspect in a case that would change everything. In the days that followed, it became clear this wasn't just a misunderstanding. McLean was charged with 6 crimes. The list included domestic violence assault, criminal threatening, criminal mischief, criminal restraint, terrorizing, and trying to stop someone from reporting a crime. Each one carried serious consequences. The most serious domestic violence assault could have put him in jail for up to 1 year. At first, McLean pleaded not guilty. His lawyer said he had done nothing wrong. But by July 2016, he took a deal. He pleaded guilty to 4 charges. 2 others were dropped. It was a strategy to avoid prison. He agreed to pay fines, complete a mental health evaluation, attend counseling, stay away from Patricia, and stay out of trouble for a year. If he followed all the terms, the most serious charge, domestic violence assault, would be dropped. And that's exactly what happened. By July 2017, he had paid $3,660 in fines, including $1,000 per remaining charge and court fees. His lawyer claimed victory, but the damage was already done. Patricia didn't stay silent. 2 months after the arrest, she filed for divorce, ending their 30-year marriage. In court papers, she said the abuse wasn't new. She described the first decade of their marriage as terrifying. She said McLean called her slurs, including anti-Semitic insults like Hebe. She said he screamed the C word at her and made her feel worthless. McLean denied it all. He went online and said he had loved his Jewish wife for nearly 30 years and was proud to have 2 Jewish children. He pointed to his song, Jerusalem, his visits to Israel, and said the accusations were lies. But the details she gave painted a very different picture. The backlash came fast. Concerts were canceled. In March 2016, students in Massachusetts got his show pulled. In July, after his plea deal, he lost an opening spot for Willie Nelson at a major concert in Idaho. His entire Australia tour was postponed. Promoters didn't want the heat. Don McLean, once known for a wholesome image, was now seen as a violent man. The loss of income was huge, but the loss of reputation was worse. Still, McLean kept calling the whole thing a squabble. That word, squabble, kept coming back to haunt him. In 2019, UCLA announced it was giving him the George and Ira Gershwin Award. Just 3 days later, they took it back. McLean snapped. On Facebook, he called them morons and demanded an apology. He said he had never assaulted anyone and claimed he was being treated unfairly. His publicist said it was humiliating. But the more he tried to deny and minimize what happened, the less people believed him. Then came the biggest blow of all. In June 2021, Don McLean's daughter, Jackie, gave a heartbreaking interview to Rolling Stone. She was 31. She said her childhood was filled with fear. Even the smallest things, like moving something in the house, could set him off. She described hours-long rages. The whole house lived in panic. She said even hearing his name now made her teeth chatter. Jackie, a musician herself, said she had PTSD. Her album, Another Life, was full of lyrics about the pain he caused. Jackie had proof. She gave the magazine emails and recordings. In one, McLean threatened to ruin her life. In others, he acted like he was some sort of god, demanding total control. She said it felt like a cult. One person ruled everything, and everyone had to obey or suffer. She developed OCD, anxiety, and depression. She built rituals just to feel safe. McLean didn't try to deny what she said. He punished her instead. In September 2021, he cut her off. No more support. No more inheritance. He told the Daily Mail she had been disinherited. She lost a $3 million trust fund. He also stopped giving her the $30,000 to $50,000 a year he had been sending. He admitted he warned her first. He said she went public to promote her album and called her ungrateful. He said he always provided for her and her husband. He claimed the real victim was him. Patricia stood by Jackie. She said the abuse Jackie described was all too familiar. She said the control, the rage, the manipulation. It was the same she had lived with. She agreed with Jackie that it felt like brainwashing. She said McLean twisted the truth so much that it became hard to know what was real. In her own words, the 911 call she made in 2016 saved her life. McLean, though, pointed to his son Wyatt. Wyatt never spoke publicly. McLean used his silence to discredit Jackie. He said Wyatt had grown up in the same house and never had a problem. He called himself a great father. Reports suggested Wyatt may have experienced the same control, but chose to stay quiet. McLean even said his new girlfriend, Paris Dillon, made his ex-wife and daughter angry. Paris was 27 when they started dating. McLean was 75. Their 48-year age gap shocked the public. But he didn't care. He called her the greatest pinup girl in America and said he was happy. In May 2019, McLean's public image took another hit. UCLA took back its Lifetime Achievement Award because of his past conviction. He responded with another angry Facebook post, calling the decision part of a dark era of accusations. He said he was innocent, but no one was buying it anymore. His 2016 guilty plea and $3,660 fine were facts he couldn't erase. In 2022, after the Uvalde school shooting, McLean canceled his NRA convention performance. It surprised people. It showed some sensitivity, but it also clashed with his usual conservative views. In August 2024, he made headlines again by saying his song American Pie predicted today's woke bullshit. He said young people didn't even know why they were angry. The backlash was instant. Despite it all, Don McLean keeps performing. He's 79 now. He still earns between $300,000 and $500,000 every year from American Pie royalties. His net worth is around $50 million. He charges $40 for autographs. In 2018, he signed a $4.5 million deal with Universal Music. On the outside, it might look like he's still winning, but behind the curtain, his family is shattered. His daughter wants nothing to do with him. His ex-wife sees him as dangerous, and his reputation, once built on nostalgia and a single song, now lives under a dark shadow that no apology has ever lifted.